Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Zhang and I'm the founder and host of Undocumented History, an online YouTube video podcast. Welcome to episode 16. I'm so honored to be talking with Bill today on this podcast. After learning about how he successfully guided millions of dollars of the California state budget to healthcare concerns, conservation projects, and AAPI fairs, thus positively impacting the community, I knew I had to interview him. On this episode, Bill and I will discuss about his book, Better to Win, which teaches Asian Americans political strategies, his thoughts on the potential need for political campaigning in school curriculum, and the art of communication in an age of extreme partisanship. Here is my conversation with him. Hi everyone, and welcome to Undocumented History, an online video podcast focused on educating others about Asian culture and history while also amplifying Asian voices and stories. I'm Tiffany Zhang, your host, and today we have a very special guest, Bill Wong, with 30 years of experience as a chief strategist in California politics and the author of Better to Win. Bill served as Chief of Staff to State Assembly Member Anthony Rendon, Chief of Staff to State Assembly Member Judy, and others, and he is also a consultant to various organizations. And he is also co-founder of the Ronin Project PAC and host of podcast Ronin Project. Before we start, is there anything else that you want to add regarding to what you do and who you are?
Nope, that all sounds great.
Okay, and I just wanted to add that if anyone listening wants to hear more about Bill's advice or any of the other topics that we're going to cover today, you can read his book Better to Win, which, speaking of which, my first question, I kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit background about your book. So, what kind of inspired you to write your book? And also, can you walk us through the process of writing this book? For example, like how long it took, how many drafts, and like the difficulty level?
Yeah, so I've been involved in politics for over 30 years, and in the course of those years, I spent most of it trying to get more Asian Americans elected to office. And what I found was that one of the biggest challenges was mindset and people's perceptions of Asians. It's like there's not a lot of content or history curated about Asian Americans in political space. We see a lot about them in engineering and in the sciences and in academia, um, but we really don't see Asian Americans in politics, and we don't see them as political leaders. So one of what really inspired me to write the book was to just add more curation of information about Asian Americans' involvement in politics, because most of the people that I talk to have no idea who, for example, that Judy Chu was the first Chinese American woman elected to the United States Congress. Now that was 2009, which is fairly recent history. So it's taken this long because we've been here since the 1700s, and to get the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress. So it's about a curation of that type of perspective and history that is not currently really highly focused on in Asian American studies or in popular mainstream media. So that was the reason. I retired recently. Well, after 35 years of doing this, so I really had nothing to do but to write a book. So I had pretty much a lot of time to write the book. It actually took me only about a month to write it. It took me about 4 months to edit it, and I read the book 12 times, which I'm pretty sick of the book right now because the editing process is pretty arduous. I sent it to a professional editor, and my wife, who reads quite a bit, also edited it, and then I sent it out to a bunch of friends in the political space to take a look at it. So it's gone through, I don't know, 24, 25 edits by the time it actually got published. But yeah, I mean, it's just stories. It was not like bar graphs or any deep research. It's just stories from my experience in the world of politics. So it was relatively easy to write, but the editing and the production was a lot more arduous.
hmm Yeah, I can imagine. And I know when you were just talking, you were talking about how it was only fairly recently that like the first Chinese American woman was like in the government space like that. And why do you think that is? Like, what do you think is the reason for that?
There's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that our parents, grandparents, great grandparents really did, shied away from encouraging people to take careers in politics and government. A lot of it was focused on math and sciences. Being a doctor. There's this joke that there are five career paths for an Asian American. It's doctor, engineer, lawyer, pharmacist, or failure. So people don't really see life outside of that. So a lot of us just didn't weren't. In fact, when I went to college as initially as an engineering major. So a lot of that is steered away. The other thing is population demographics. Like we didn't really have a lot of districts where there were enough Asians in order to make you viable as a candidate. Now that's even it's changed now, but Asians can get elected in non-Asian districts per se, but having a base of voters and having a base of donors, a base of supporters, people who understand the business, is all very helpful. I mean those are all very key things that help the Black and Latino community get the gains that they have today.
Of course. And can you also talk a little bit? I know in your book you talked about how like the model minority also kind of promotes that, or people may use the model minority to see Asians as like kind of passive and easy marks. So can you also kind of talk about that?
Yeah, it's interestingly, it's two sides. One, people don't believe that we're good leaders because we don't we're passive. The perspective is that we're passive and that we're obedient. And politics is about conflict. Politics is about pressing your perspective and your point of view and your agenda. And it's a much more competitive and aggressive scenario than the perspective of other people have of Asians as just good workers, but not good leaders. So there's the stigma of that, and then what that does is that it makes it harder to raise money. It makes it harder for people to get support and endorsements from people because they just don't think that you have the right mentality to be a strong leader in the world of politics. And then there's the part of it that's within ourselves where we don't see that in ourselves and that we don't press the edges or push the boundaries as much as we should. Luckily, when I was starting in politics, I got thrown into it where um, I had to be very aggressive. And I did not realize that I wasn't aggressive at the time until I got into lobbying, which is an intensely aggressive career, and realizing that my perspectives on being aggressive and being competitive were nowhere near what is the standard in the business and the political world.
hmm And I definitely agree with the kind of duality of the model minority myth because it paints Asians as smart and successful, but then it also paints them as easy marks, which is kind of like contradictory because you wouldn't expect a smart and successful person to be an easy target. And I don't know if you said this in your book or in another interview, but you talked about how the model minority are golden handcuffs because they like seem good, but it's like the stereotype isn't actually good. And my next kind of question that I wanted to ask you was about political campaigning. I know you talked about lobbying, but do you think that political campaigning and behind the scenes of politics and legislators should be taught in schools as early as elementary schools?
Maybe not elementary school because when I was in elementary school, I was just trying to get to the kickball field and stuff like that. So it's not really salient to you at that age, but like even like middle school and high school definitely. Yeah, I hadn't planned on it, but when I was in high school I ran for student council. It's because everybody else did and I was applying to colleges and that's supposed to look good. So those types of experiences actually were the training ground of early leadership development and being able to work with others and being able to build coalitions and understand things cross culturally, be a better listener, be a better teammate, those types of things. So yeah, definitely middle school, high school were very pivotal for me, and I think that those types of conversations and that type of activism should start there.
hmm But I guess kind of like turn on, not like turn on that, but do you think that political campaigning and politics should be taught in school at all, or do you think it should more just be if the student is like interested in it?
I think they should be exposed to it. The general challenge of adding things to the curriculum is that you only have so much time in a day. So does that take away from math and sciences? Does that take away from other classes that you have there? And I think that this is just general challenge. But I think that definitely being involved in it. A lot of the role is more so than school, but like parents and relatives and friends should all do that type of stuff as extracurricular activities.
Hmm. And of course, even though I do agree that it should be exposed in school, there will obviously be, I feel like there would be a lot of backlash if political campaigning is taught in schools. How do you kind of suggest that we deal with that?
Well, in life, there's always going to be backlash to everything. So if you believe in it, you have to push for it. And this is we live in a society about competitive agendas, and the ones who want it the most and who can continue to press for it are going to dominate. So if you think that it's important, you have to really press for it. You can't. Um, we're no longer in a world, or I don't know if we ever were in a world where things just happen organically. This is we are a better society because of these competing agendas and the robustness of the debate and the robustness of those types of activism and energies put into those perspectives is what really makes us a very strong and successful society.
Hmm. And I know you talked about the robustness of debate and how competitive agendas can push society to be better, but I feel like also in this era we see like politicians just yelling and disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing, which is like extreme partisanship. Do you kind of believe that the art of communication is over, like
Uh,
diplomatic communication?
I think it's a phase. Uh, extreme hyperbole has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, and I am guilty of it. But the difference is that I've got a lot of Republican friends. We go toe to toe all the time. It's it's like any type of competitive sports. Like on the field, you can be competitive as hell, and you can work as hard as you can, hit as hard as you can on the competitive field. But at the end of the day, I'll still go have lunch or have drinks with my Republican friends, and then we'll just laugh about it because we know our role in that space, and we have our jobs to provide the best assertion of our philosophical party's perspective. But in the end, we're all basically the same, and we both have opportunities to grow from it. So long as we don't take it personally, so long as we don't go over the top and try to attack somebody personally, pushing an agenda aggressively is not the same as being a jerk.
Hmm. And what do you think that, I guess, this communication is going to look like in the age of like AI and short attention spans?
It could be disaster or it could be good. It just ultimately it always comes down to the humans that are directing it. Like how do we use it? For example, fire. You could like cook a meal or you could burn your house down. But that usually depends upon the person that is handling the fire. So, if we don't look in ourselves and try to find, our core values, our core beliefs, our code of how we conduct ourselves and understand that we have a responsibility to handle these types of things responsibly, then yeah, it's going to come off the rails, and then it's going to be an apocalyptic situation. But if we handle things responsibly, for example, not that it's necessarily a great example, or that we handled it responsibly in the beginning, but nuclear warfare. I mean, in the beginning we handled it quite poorly. Obviously we exterminated 250,000 people with nuclear warfare, and that's fundamentally ethically wrong. But since then, we haven't. And even though we're on the precipice of it, and even though it's a very dangerous technology, we managed to not blow ourselves up.
Hmm. I guess continuing on communication, do you believe that like real like diplomatic communication will, I guess, ever be like like not a trend, but do you think it will ever be achieved?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a critical survival mechanism. If we don't, and we've had it for hundreds of years, and we're currently in an era where it's disabled, but um, it's something that we can reestablish. It's something that is critical to our survival as a species. It's something that is critical for us to survive as a society. So that drive to have to be able to communicate with each other in a more diplomatic manner, more civil manner, is right now the question of the day. If we get it and realize that we have to cross that bridge and start to act more responsibly, then we'll survive as a society. We'll survive as a species. But if we don't, we won't. I mean, it'll just be chaos, and we'll just end up killing each other, and then it won't be an issue because we'll be all dead.
And I wanted to kind of pivot to another part in politics besides communication. Money and politics and special interests are a reality of politics and governance. With the influence of money, how does one communicate for groups who don't have the money to get any legislation passed on their behalf?
Well, there are a lot of techniques that are out there. I mean, money is a giant barrier, but you don't need to raise money one for one with regard to who your opposition is. So long as you have a strong understanding of strategy, if you have a strong understanding of the process, if you have motivated volunteers and a motivated base, you can do it. It's not easy, but it can be done because ultimately we're all human. There are points where no matter how much money you have, you get to a saturation point where you have diminishing returns. So they could have billions of dollars and they can have some impact, but there's also a point of time where that money is no longer as effective as it was before. At the same time, you can't do it with nothing. You have to have some resources in order to like feed your volunteers or to do whatever you possibly can. But we also have billions of people out there that can chip in, and I've been part of campaigns where thousands of people have chipped into efforts and raised enough money in order to be competitive and to win races and to win issue campaigns.
hmm So I guess what you're saying is money is important, but at a certain point, it isn't super important at the same time.
Not if you're smart and not if you have time to prepare.
Of course. And then one of my last questions that I wanted to ask you is I know you wrote a whole book about anecdotes, but were there any anecdotes that didn't get included in the book that you would like to share?
All the ones that I would like to share, I can't share as anecdotes just because that's part of the craft of politics is and the craft of what I do is there's a lot of times when you can't take credit for the things that you did or the amazing things that you're able to accomplish because that's part of the deal. It's like you can't embarrass certain people, you can't put people in a difficult light, and sometimes that's what it takes to hold something together where the greater good is more important. So, the biggest skill that I've learned in this 35 years of politics is when to like shut up. That's the most important thing, and that's difficult now because we're in a era where it's about oversharing. It's like you have to tout everything that you did, what you ate, where you walked to this morning, where you are to the world, and a lot of times that's extraneous, and it's also not helpful to preserving the type of civility and social cohesion that's out there because now it's everybody is somebody's having a better life than me every day when I look on social media, and that doesn't focus on what we could be doing to make the society better.
hmm And then besides the kind of criteria that you just listed, like putting someone in a bad light, how else did you decide what anecdotes to include in your story and what anecdotes to not include in your story?
The main rule that I applied was that I included stories that were my stories to tell, that I was specifically involved in, that I could tell from my perspective without compromising somebody else's privacy or um, even there are parts where obviously, like for example, Judy Chu has accomplished some amazing things, but I want her to be able to tell those stories. The stories that I told were the ones that I was just directly involved in, that I could share my perspective on. But she's got so many stories of great accomplishments that she's done that she should have the opportunity to tell at her own time and at her own choosing. And that's the case. Is like everybody, and one of the reasons why I wrote the book was I wanted to encourage other people to share their stories, to curate this, so that people who are interested to seeing that perspective of Asian Americans in this space can actually see that more so than when somebody else is describing it for you. Like journalists only see like a small sliver of it, so they're not be able to tell the entire story of how it came to be. They can only see it from the outside.
hmm Definitely. And what advice do you have for Asian Americans who want to be a politician or involved in politics? Slash, like, what do you want people to take away from reading this book, whether they're Asian American or not?
I think the biggest thing is that we wait around for somebody else to do it. And the big message in the book is like you can wait around, but ultimately it's up to you. If you want to change the world, if you want to make it a better place, then it's up to you. You got to get in the game, and you got to either run for office or help other people run for office. I mean, it's not just running for office. You could serve as a staff member, or you could just serve as a donor. I mean, there's so many ways to contribute to this part of the ecosystem that makes our community stronger and healthier and more viable in the space of representation. But nobody else is going to do it for us. You can't sit around and wait for permission. You just have to go do it. And if you're going to do it, it's not a contest necessarily of merit. It's a contest of competitiveness. It's about who wins the race and who outworks the other side. And this is not about your resume. This is not about what school you went to or how many awards you won. It's about how you connect with people and what you stand for as a human being. And sometimes we lose that. We're so um, we're so preoccupied with status. We're so preoccupied with accomplishments that sometimes we're not really seeing how we fit into the larger society as a whole.
Hmm. And that was such a great note to end this interview on. So thank you so much, Bill, for coming on and speaking with me. It was great to speak with you. And do you have any like last comments, any social media plugs that you want to do before we end?
No, not really, but I encourage everybody to be involved and to care, and then to exercise, that perspective and that interest in the world of politics, because we need more people. We particularly need young people to be more involved in the world of politics and to change the direction that the conversation is going.
Of course. And also, maybe if you're not directly involved in politics, I think voting and just staying informed is also super important. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Bill, and I will see everyone next time. Bye.
Thank you so much.